Welcome everybody to our third episode of Through the King, our podcast of Tzolkin, where we are analyzing the energies of famous people through the Mayan Tzolkin. Hi, Carol, how are you?
Hi, Karen. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good today. We're recording this on the Wizard.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the monkey wave spell, which is obviously the wave spell of the person that we're going to discuss. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm just going to put my monkey head on.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
This will be
Here we
fun. At least for us, it will be fun.
you've
Uh,
got always got to make it fun. Got to make it fun anyway. Yes.
yeah, of course.
So,
Well, let's see. What about um what about if I told you about someone who transformed a close, highly structured circle and whose energetic presence speaks of revolutionizing the places that she passed through? What glyph could you mention that this does?
yeah, which glyph of the monkey wave spells would you associate with that? With causing a revolutionizing, yeah. And
Yeah,
this isn't a an artist like the previous two. This isn't a
yeah.
musician or, in fact, she loved music. She loved dance.
But it wasn't her job or any of those things.
Yeah, I think she was
So,
probably about as good at dancing and singing as me, actually. I think I'm probably
okay,
similar level.
okay,
Yeah.
but she enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the main. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the main thing. I think you got to enjoy it.
yeah. So,
Why? So, should we
definitely,
say what to give a clue? Oh, we're still guessing the
yeah,
glyph.
yeah.
You want to
Because
give the color of the
yeah.
glyph.
Well, we are talking about transform something, so we are talking a blue energy, a blue glyph, like the others glyph also transform, but each one through their own way. So this one, it's an expert, we could say, in transform emotions and revolutionize, like we said. So we are talking about a storm, right? And
And
in
a kind of
the
unlikely storm, really.
yeah, exactly, because we have this image that the storm it broke, it changed everything, but
This
I
can be
think
destructive. Yeah. Well,
yeah, but this
but this is a
one
monkey wave spell. So,
exactly. So this one did it with smiles and laughing and with innocence, also with
yeah,
magic.
definitely innocence. Definitely innocence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I think she used, because it's a she, a lot of love to transform all that. So we are not talking about anything like a violent transformation.
No, this was about transforming a society that had stagnated. Because we're the period that we're looking at is we're going back to the early 1980s. So
Yeah. So, of course, as we are talking about the monkey wave spell, we are talking about a blue solar storm and who revolutionates everything where she passed. So,
yeah, so if you're going to revolutionize things, right, you want to
yeah,
have the most impact. If you're going to have the most effect, the most impact, you need to be in the right place.
yeah,
If
of
it's,
course.
if there's if you're a storm and you're just, I don't mean just really, but you're going, you're out in the middle of the ocean. Maybe it won't be noticed so much, or you're out away from, at least by human society, or you're out in the countryside. But if you're right in the middle, as this person was, you find yourself right in at the spot where you could have greatest impact, and that is really why she became so famous. And so
Sorry.
how did she get to that position, Karen?
Well, she gets to that position through marriage with a
Like a
with
fairy
a
tale. A
Yeah,
fairy
like a fairy
tale.
tale with a man with a lot of power, and so she became in a princess, right?
She sure did. So that's like a big clue. She was a princess in the most fairy tale wedding. It was, we're talking early 1980s, and it was a worldwide televised wedding, just like the fairy tales, with the carriage, kind of Cinderella like in some ways, with the it's like a giant meringue. Most beautiful dress,
Yeah,
actually. Marrying
and
into one of the most stale, a family that was in a museum. She married
yeah.
into
So
the royal family of the United Kingdom.
yeah, so I guess everyone should guess who is this character. We are talking about Diana Spencer, better known as Lady Di, or
Or Princess Diana, still.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She's an iconic woman in 90s, of course, because like a good storm, she really bring the revolution with her when she got married with Prince Charles, and she show us a new face.
She was like a breath of fresh air and kind of new blood. So in all ways, really, to the royal family,
Yeah,
and also and when she first arrived and the public were first introduced her, she looked just so shy, and she had that way of looking from under, her, I don't know, her brow, sort of like with her chin
yeah,
down. And she did just seem very, very shy, didn't she? So we didn't really necessarily know just how
yeah,
she was going to develop, and in that role that she found herself in. Um, so yeah, so Storm. And we have, when we look at her oracle, we also, and she's in the monkey wave spell. So we mentioned before that she liked doing, she was always about having fun, making a joke, and enjoying um, sort of music and dancing and everything. She had a lot of famous friends who were um, entertainers, and her analog is the sun, which really actually fits as well
yeah.
with
It
her.
shows her her inner light uh, invited her to shine with her kindness and being a song for other people, because since the moment that she appeared in front of cameras, she started to call the attention with her ways and her fresh air, like you said, and her simple way to show herself. Because even when she was with the royalty, she always tried to show herself as someone simple and with a lot of feelings to share with people. So
Yeah, I
this
find
song,
it's quite incredible when you look at the photos of her throughout her life, and actually how glowing she
yeah,
is all the way back, from when she's first introduced the public. Those photos, that glow just still seems to exude from her. Quite incredible, really. Yeah, certainly seems to fit with that, having sun as her analog there. And I
yeah,
also thinking with this wind that she has as her occult in the oracle,
yeah,
because she didn't seem to be aware of her power, but the media, and right from the start, they just were absolutely obsessed with her. It was like throwing meat, it sounds like the blood analogy again, but like fresh meat to a pack of dogs or something. It really was as if the Brit certainly I was, because mainly I was in Britain around the time that she was alive, and it's as if they were so thirsty for this. After they'd been denied, there was nothing really to attract them
yeah,
towards the royal family in recent years, I suppose. And yeah, she certainly had this. I would say the wind, the power with the media. and
Yeah,
communication, but she did it in a way that wasn't okay. Later on, people would say it was more planned, and she planned things a bit. But initially, I think she had no idea, really.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. And also with this wind that we say we are seeing on the oracle as tarot code. Um, her at first she looked really shy and quiet, but when she realized that she got that power uh, to talk for others, and she always it's funny because I was seeing some videos of that era, and she the first thing that she always did when she saw that somebody it was waiting outside where she was, it was talk with people, ask the people how it was it, how are what they bought, and so she always connect with people through the talks, speaking with them, and that was something that before you didn't see with royalty characters. I mean, talking with or treated them like someone
yeah, she wanted
special.
to, you always got the impression she wanted to bring people up. She
Yeah,
wasn't there, I'm royal and you're there. She clearly wanted to always bring people up, sort of like for the underdog. And I think that as time went on, and well, I mean, even from the very moment of her own wedding, she knew that, and we found out the other thing with Diana as well was that this fairy tale wedding that we saw was late as time went on, and whatever we saw of her public persona, which was the smiles, the relations with the people, as you're saying, talking to people very kindly and warmly. We also went through, and then later on we would find out that she'd actually been suffering a lot herself behind the
yeah,
scenes, and we would find that out during her lifetime. So that also makes it more incredible and relevant for her son. She always managed to smile and talk to people, and that's where she seemed to, I suppose, what she wasn't getting at home in a way. That would be, more from the public that she'd receive that, which is why I know might be jumping a bit, but when you look at Charles's oracle, and he again, it is the reason why she became famous. I don't think she would have remotely found herself in with the fame she had if she had not married literally the future King of England. And so his oracle is being the reverse of hers.
yeah,
You can sort of see why, so he's got the sun as his antipod and the
yeah,
moon as his analog. Um, and she's the other way round. So yeah, that kind of public facing that she had, and the fact that he was the opposite. So she probably wasn't really getting that kind of interactions at home. Really,
yeah,
it was a bit empty, probably behind the scenes.
yeah,
So we also have the wind in her crystal tone as well, don't we? So
exactly. So I think that's why also she feel close to the people,
yeah,
because she gave her voice to show what it was wrong, what was still wrong in the world. So I think she used her voice to help people, and well, um, it was her her gift also, because when we are talking about the occult, we're talking about that her her power as a storm to transform also it manifests through their words. So
yeah, and
of course,
communication. Because sometimes she
so
communicated through her clothes and what she wore, and how she did
exactly,
and what she did. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I think she realized that she had that power, And well, also, if we talk about the oracle, and we saw her antipode that we are seeing right now, that is the moon. Well, she it was her challenge also, because being part of the royal family in one moment, and being outside the royal family after everything she passed through in that moment, it was really hard for her. She had to hide a lot of wounds that a lot of suffering, like you said, but also she chose transform a lot of things that it would happen in the emotional part in her life. And so she turned into all that suffering into fuel to impulse her voice and her role in society to do something different that everyone expect from her.
Yeah, I mean, one example of that would be what's called the revenge dress. I don't know, did you? So there is an evening, it's in 1994, and Diana wears this striking black dress. We can
Okay.
put a photograph of it on the screen, and it's a particular. She's going on her own to this evening at an art gallery, and she knows that it's the evening that Charles is going to reveal to the public that he was always that the relationship isn't working, and that he has been having sort of an affair with Camilla, and
Okay.
so she puts on this dress that the designer of it said, "Oh, I thought she was never going to wear it, but she'd been saving it almost like it's almost like it'd been there for a moment like this." And she came out looking absolutely striking and attracts all the attention of the media. So by this
Yeah,
time, she is definitely turning the negative into the positive for her, you know. So
of course.
yeah, this has become, something that people totally respected her for, because at the same, here's the royal family. It was the fairy tale wedding, and yet actually, this is one of the most archetypal kind of problems that a lot of people face. It's just that they don't,
Yeah,
with weddings and marriages and affairs and one thing and another. Not everybody is in the royal family though, with the whole world watching, and their wedding and then the breakdown of it. So yeah, that the revenge dress is quite a good example of that,
yeah,
turning it
yeah,
to her
yeah,
advantage. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
And kind of interesting in a way that it's black. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, because she has this moon and night figuring in her story through the Tzolkin, with the night being her um, cosmic energy ultimately, which is when you look at the kin and the symbol for the night, it does look like the curtains that she was opening to show everybody to get a peek behind what's really going on behind the curtains of the royal family. And that's was really also one of demystifying this family that really the public was disenchanted with, and and
yeah,
here she was with, if I can go now, jump to something that I think's highly important to mention really at this stage, is her integrated energy, which is the energy that is really the primary purpose, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Because, um, well, as we said before, she is a solar storm, and she had this resonant monkey. It's a double monkey because her purpose is, and she has the chrono. So these two energies together are electric dog, like you said. So we are talking about someone that, if I want to define a meaning of these three energies. She transformed, she tried to be original and creative with the monkey, and she find this beautiful energy offering her service through love, through this electric dog that shows love as a powerful feeling, like a powerful force. And well, I guess every time that we see what how she become in the women that appears in every news, and especially after she got married and she started to do this humanity service and uh, help people that need
Yeah, she was
medicines
very
and
much, yeah, and that was very much at that time, the humanitarian actions were really the flavor of the 80s. And that was
yeah,
before. Unfortunately, since then, we've learned of certain humanitarian missions. You know, for example, there was the famous Live Aid in
yeah,
concert, but we later learned that actually that money had been misappropriated. So the 1980s were full of these good intentions, really, really wonderful intentions, and Diana really was the standard bearer for that. We've now found out probably what she knew was that behind the scenes, though, unfortunately, that things were not as they appeared on the surface. Some of these, to this day, we haven't yet resolved this problem. It's almost like
yeah,
we have our good intentions, but how to get that to the place where we want it to go and get the results
yeah,
without it being, you know, the money being stolen here or there, or all this
yeah,
kind of intrigue does surround her, of course. So we've got the sun, we've got this glowing person, but you can't talk about Diana or look on the internet and videos about her without actually surrounding that is that she also brought attention to the sort of behind the scenes, you know,
yeah,
things are not so good as we'd
yeah,
like them to be. Yeah.
yeah, and
But it was all about love for her. I'll just say on
exactly,
that, just one more thing, is that she was not somebody of big speeches really or anything. She
yeah,
occasionally gave little speeches, but her really, I think all she ever really talked about was love. It's all about love for her, and that's really what she wanted to be remembered as, really, or to be thought of as the queen of people's hearts. And it was always about
yeah,
love with her. So the electric dog as her integrated energy for this storm, what drives the actual motor for this, everything about this storm that she was all about love. And
yeah,
that's because we don't have a long time to talk about every aspect of her life. I am jumping a bit, but that's why when she died in August 1997, that was almost the moment where her impact became most apparent,
yeah,
because the impact she had on people, it was like an explosion, and it seemed to explode like a huge, just flowers, flowers, flowers. Everybody, that's just, and she left that legacy. That was the legacy
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that she also left.
and all the mysteries, we could call mysteries around her death. Um, Also, I guess until today, they don't have an a clear answer about what happened that night with her. But I was thinking about the um, the lunar sun, that it was the king, that it was the day that she passed away, and it was in the storm wave spell. So we could mention this wave spell as her personality, maybe, as her characteristics, as the purpose of this period. And the lunar sun, I was thinking that, like we said, it represents the inner light, the kindness, but it's the streams of that, like a challenge to shine. And so I was thinking in this sun, turning off, right? And it's kind of metaphoric, maybe. And this is a maybe something curious. It's this energy is the perfect antipode in the Oracle of Charles. And well, even when they were divorced a long time ago, uh, he always being suspected in some ways about her the way she died, right? But well, we are not here for resolve
Well,
this
yeah, but even
mystery.
if yeah, but just looking at the kins, it can suggest that you have this antagonist. It's this that they're constantly in a sort of a dance, actually, the
Yeah,
two with their energies.
yeah,
It could, in a different circumstance, different people could could work really well. They could have done
yeah,
work together and produced something amazing. But when there are wounds there, and the one person there's an antagonism, which yeah could imply that as being a definite possibility. I'm always of
yeah,
the I know where I stand. I remember very, very well the whole and reading the papers immediately afterwards, and how I add everything together. But you know what really, this might be a bit anecdotal, but what really annoyed me so much in the moment was I was like, why didn't they get the children to her immediately? We're talking about the royal family. We're talking access to, they could have got private jets and helicopters. That to me would have been the most human sort of thing to do.
yeah,
And the fact they didn't do that to me never sat well. It's never sat well with me. It's to me it speaks of manipulation. No, one thing that Diana always said, I say she always said it as if I knew her so well, but one of the things she's most famous for was to say, I'm led by my heart, not my head. And that is so the opposite of
yes,
what she married into. And that's why it was what an impact, what a contrast. I don't think it's so much of a saving grace. The with the funeral, the Queen did not want her to have a public funeral, but
yeah,
Charles did seem to pick up on the fact that that would be a disaster. And so he was in favour of the public funeral, which was absolutely amazing in a sense that at least it allowed, you couldn't have contained that outpouring of grief. I remember I watched it. I was in London at the time, but I never go to huge crowds if I can avoid it. But I avoid crowds. I watched it probably on TV, and I remember crying so much throughout the whole thing.
yeah,
You know, but to even after she'd gone, she forced the hand of the royal family to give her a public funeral. And they would have had to do it. I think that's where her power is. This is why it's really quite incredible that she must have, and I'm sure she knew really she wouldn't have got into this marriage in the first place if she didn't think she had something inside her that was pretty
yeah,
strong, that she thought would be good for the country, and that she had something to give. I think she had that very, very strongly inside her. And so she was always a bit of a force to be reckoned with. You can't just cover that up and push it to the corner and
yeah,
hope it'll go. You know, it just became and stronger.
yes,
This energy, even like I said, I mean, her funeral was really took on a life of its own. You know,
yeah,
and
yeah. I remember that that event because I was really young, but I remember that show it on TV, and also I remember the moment where Elton John sang "Candle in the Wind." That
yeah.
actually he was one of her best friends, and
Mm.
also shared the same uh, wave spell because Elton John it's a magnetic monkey, so he was connected with her through their purpose, and well, it was one of the most iconic moments in history, and she revolutionized also that aspect in royalty that the funeral was public and transmitted all around the world by TV. So
Like her
it
wedding,
was a
and yeah, so these bookends, but they really were both. You can't script those. It's because the royal family in England, they are all about pomp and ceremony, and it's all so organized, and very rarely does anything happen that's kind of human almost. And when it does, the photographers are like, oh look, Catherine smiled, or somebody did this, or the children. But so yeah, that was it was like a storm, actually, the wedding, but more so the funeral. Actually, it was almost like a storm. It was a sad storm, but it carried a huge message with it.
I think that it's interesting the dates that you took note around her marriage, because her challenge was the human in her monkey wave spell, and
Right.
in rhythmic human in the hand wave spell, they announced their engagement, and in overtone hand, that is a familiar energy from human, they got married. And also they divorce on spectral human, that if we put the both oracles, the one when they announce their engagement and
Right.
the one where they divorce, it's the same oracle, because it's the human guiding the human. So it's the decisions, the freedom, the willness, and it's like metaphoric but also energetic message that she is,
when she divorces, it's spectral.
yeah,
She's kind of ascended almost, or evolved beyond.
exactly,
No? Yeah.
exactly. She's deciding, she's choosing her freedom and be a royal person, but as real, like
Yeah.
be real.
Okay. Yeah. To be a
So
real person. Well, she's kind of like a superhuman. She's human but superhuman, rather than
yeah,
you
so
kind. But
this,
in the way that she's fearless, I think, because fear. It's like the love and fear. She overcoming the fear is really. I think she really did sort of.
yeah,
Well, I mean, she
amazing
was
work.
all about humans. It was like I was saying, you never saw her really with animals. I mean, I love
Yeah,
animals, more than a lot of us do. But she was really devoted to the the human condition, like
yeah,
humanitarianism, like you mentioned. She really wanted people to feel better about. She wanted a
yeah,
better world for us.
of
Yeah.
course. So, well, this is our third episode. Thank you for joining us until now. And well, let us know if you like this content, but also we would like to invite you to choose the next character that we are going to interpret. We will let you on the description on this video the list of people that belongs to the seed wave spell, that is the next one, so you can choose one of them, and the one with the most votes, it will be the next one that we interpret with the Tzolkin energies. So how do you feel, Carol, until now?
Well, we'll continue our journey through the central mystic column of the Tzolkin, and yeah, see who wins the most votes for the seed wave spell. Once we come out the other side, we may all be very different, but the world may have changed for the better, I hope, by then.
Well, we hope your comments and your votes, of course, and see you on the next episode of Through the King. Bye, Carol.
Bye, Karen.